Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to episode 11 of Raised Red Living Blue. I'm Sloan Roden, joined by
Jason Will.
Jason Will. How are you this morning? You look flustered.
I'm okay. Yeah, I'm just like super busy at work,
Okay.
which is good considering the price of eggs is skyrocketing.
Right.
So I'm not sure how long I will be busy, but I listened to an episode of Raging Moderates. They need a lot of support. So if you just subscribe and don't listen, that's really going to help them. But they need to get to like 50,000 listeners ASAP. So just a plug for them. But Jessica Tarloff, I just love her. She's so smart, so insightful. And of course, I'm a big fan of Scott Galloway's as well. But, they were really down. Like they were like beat down. This podcast was recorded this Monday of this week. And they were just like, what the hell is going on? And really, really concerned. And at the end of the podcast, Scott was talking to Jessica. He's like, what's going on with your kids? Let's talk about like your world as a mom. Cause she's like this big mom. And it just reminded me, like I was asking, my wife, I was like, how are y'all? Cause she's just totally tuning out news. And I'm like, how can you really do that? And she's like, I'm getting in this bubble and I ain't coming out for 4 years. And whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that's not a really good idea.
I can respect someone protecting their space and their mental health. My objection would be y'all's marriage is not at stake. Y'all have already had your kids. Y'all aren't in the process of the fight for fertility, which is one, of this battle, that's one front. But then the other battle of the attacks on abortion, which make women who are currently pregnant, in the family planning stage, I mean, that's very, very scary. In expanding my family, could that put my life at risk and therefore my family's future at risk? And those are some of the biggest things that hit home for me. And I can see if someone is not in those stages of life, how they can step away. I can't step away. Not a day goes by that I don't think about expanding our family, but the process that I have to go through, it's not as easy as it is for straight couples. It's more involved financially, but it really comes down to, like, what if something happens to me? Steph doesn't have her parents anymore. And so, like, I'm like scared to put us in that situation. But then there's also this fear of not expanding our family either. And my primary care doctor has literally told me, your clock is ticking, and it is this daily struggle I have. So I can see where people can step back. It can come from a place of privilege or where these things aren't directly affecting you like it is for other people. And I try to say all of this with, grace and kindness and understanding. And I think I would say it to Diana if she were here.
Yeah.
And I think, she would, I think her response would, be understanding of my side as well.
Oh, sure. And she's been empathetic on social media to a lot of these posts from her friends about, these ICE raids and just some of the fallout that's happening based on these executive orders and just these new political policies. It's really tough. I go back to like what Josh was saying last week. Well, first of all, let me say this.
Okay.
So I left the podcast. We had this big, empathetic, just very heartfelt. I mean, Josh, I think, kind of scolded us a little bit for, unfollowing, muting people on social media.
Oh, I didn't take that at all.
It was just like, I don't think maybe scold's the wrong word. Maybe it's just encouragement of like, don't do that. Like he was also empathetic that we were doing it for mental health reasons. And I think your point was really, really strong about you had really, I think, two big keys: mental health and the fact that you didn't want the relationship with some of these people to be permanently damaged.
Yeah.
But he was, my take on it was, he was like, I get it, but you don't need to mute them. You need to engage with them, try to understand where they're coming from. And I was just listening to the replay in my car this past week from last week. I was like, man, I'm just not ready.
Yeah.
So I came home unhinged Thursday night. I was feeling so good about our podcast. It really was, I think, a great episode. And I just, sometimes when I ride in my car, I will listen to clips, media clips.
Okay.
And I listened to the clip of Trump going full DEI haterade on the situation with the plane crash.
The FAA is actively recruiting workers who suffer severe intellectual disabilities, psychiatric problems, and other mental and physical conditions under a diversity and inclusion hiring initiative spelled out on the agency's website. Can you imagine?
Are you saying this crash was somehow caused and the result of diversity hiring? And what evidence have you seen to support these claims?
It just could have been. We have a high standard. We've had a much higher standard than anybody else. And there are things where you have to go by brain power, you have to go by psychological quality, and psychological quality is a very important element of it. These are various very powerful tests that we put to use, and they were terminated by Biden, and Biden went by a standard that's the exact opposite. So we don't know, but we do know that you had two planes at the same level. You had a helicopter and a plane. That shouldn't have happened.
But I was like, these people most of them are still in the bottom of the Potomac, and you're not like expressing any condolences for the family. Mm-hmm. I was like, this is the state of our leadership in this country. But I also want to say this, is that I feel like we went through the politics of fear and misinformation during the election campaign. Mm-hmm. Now that the administration has, been sworn into office, I feel like we're in the politics of distraction. Like I was just trying to figure out this Gulf of America thing. And they said, listen, this Gulf of America thing is a distraction. It is it's to distract you from the fact that there's this oligarchy taking place. Yeah. And everybody's falling for the bait. I mean, you see the T-shirts and the hats and, all the memes and everybody's just diving right in, while at the same time the price of eggs are skyrocketing. Well, you can't even find freaking eggs. Yeah. And if you can, they're 3 times the price they were not too long ago. But so I've been trying to find positive. This is, I don't know if this is my mental health anchor, but I've been trying to really listen to both sides, listen to both bias leaning one way or the other media outlets. I got caught up in the distraction machine since last week because I was like, man, this whole tariff thing makes no sense. The only people it punishes are the companies and the consumers of those companies' products and services or whatever. And then you hear, well, now Canada's stepping up and sending more resources to their northern border. Mexico's stepping up and sending more resources to the southern border. So I was like, gosh, maybe there's something is effective with what he's doing. I just feel like, there's got to be a better way to do it. But if it's working, I mean, Mexico should do their part. And then it comes out. You see the factcheck.org say, well, Mexico agreed to send 10,000 troops to the border under Biden. And he got it done without threatening tariffs and sending the stock market into a tailspin. So, it's like, it's just him wanting these victories, these pats on the back, these points.
And it's this thing that Katie Britt says, promises made, promises kept. And it's like these things he knows he could do. A few things on this tariff thing. I had a lunch with another realtor whose husband is a builder. And it was very all real estate and just reconnecting with life. But I did say, I was like, oh, okay, your husband's a builder. What is he saying about especially the tariffs with Canada? Because that impacts lumber. Mm-hmm. And her husband said there's plenty of sawmills here. They've just been shut down. And so we could meet the demand. And my thing was like, okay, but then you've got to find people, train people, ensure the equipment is working. Like the lag time to get those sawmills fully functioning, like, is longer than what the American public is going to allow. And then here's another note. We don't even know if those sawmills have the equipment to meet today's demand. A few months ago, Steph had a guy come out. He bids for timber companies. And he said, you really need to go ahead and cut all these hardwoods you have, because the demand on sawmills right now are these faster growing loblolly pines that use smaller equipment. So like if you wait too long to cut these huge big old hardwoods, there's not going to be a demand because sawmills no longer have the equipment to work. So like what the demand is now for wood is changing to, or for timber and is changing to, the sawmills have to adjust their equipment. So we don't even know if the, so that's just, it is a ripple effect. Here's another thing. If y'all, fellow realtors, if y'all want to follow like how this affects the housing industry, I was listening to Housing Wire this morning. Their lead economist, Logan Matashami, is a dude. And he was talking about how tariffs play a role into this. And I mean, his kind of opinion is like, tariffs never work. They're always just something to say they're going to do and to like,
oh, this is my computer,
strike fear or something. So it's interesting hearing it for somebody locally, having that kind of personal knowledge, and then hearing it from an economist standpoint.
It's crazy, but I've got so many more fish to fry today. I've got some really interesting headlines I want to talk about. What's really chapping your ass right now? Like, is it this transgender athletes, female can no longer compete in the ban in women's sports? Is that your big thing?
So I've been like really excited and feel really good about this podcast and what we're doing. And I've been really thinking like, there's all these things, or I see these things on social media, Black women saying, we're the 92%. We've done the work. It is time for everybody else to step up. And I'm like, yes, time to step up. I'm thinking, okay, like if I turn people off by my politics, then I need to grow a new target market of like-minded people, because I feel like other blue dots want to do business with blue dots. So it's like, okay, where can I focus my energy and get involved and meet new people and form these connections for this podcast, but like also my business, but also my mental and personal health.
And that was some support and advice that we got from Josh last week. He's like, you'll find your tribe.
I reached out to a previous client who has been prepping their house to go on the market for when they find the next one. And she was like, we are putting a hard pause on this for now. We've got to see what Trump's going to do. And it immediately filled me with fear. Like if, they are like-minded like us. And it's like, if they are hitting the pause button, are all other blue dots hitting the pause button? So is my idea of developing this target market now completely bad?
Are you going MAGA on me?
No, but like, do I need to take this off my personal page and do a lot more work and opinions through our Raised Red Living Blue spaces, and then keep my personal one a little more targeted? I don't know. Just trying to figure it out. All that happened yesterday, so it's still very fresh.
Well, I think that's a great segue for the Jason Patton episode. Because I would tell you, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, I think I've been pretty clear about this, is that I don't want this podcast anywhere near my personal pages for that very reason. Where, I'm trying to get this lake business established. And I just had my first lake house closing, and I just feel this momentum.
Yeah, your geographical area that you are targeting
is MAGA.
Yes.
On steroids.
Right. And a lot of the people I already work with are left leaning or leftish leaning, or not so far right.
I mean just for livelihood reasons. I mean I've always, my ass has been perpetually chapped by the fact that my right-leaning friends can get on literally social media and
spew hatred.
Well, say Democrats are murderers, Democrats are baby killers.
Yep.
And these are big church-going people. And I'm like, F you, dude.
I know. It's unfair, and
I can't get on here and go, hey, I don't think some of this stuff is right.
Well, and that's why I have to unfollow those realtors, because it makes me angry.
Yeah.
And anger makes me lash out. And
I would think at the very least, if you ran into them in public, I mean, you're not going to be as friendly if they just made a hateful statement or bigoted statement or misogynistic statement. Yeah, so that's one of my big soapbox things. That it's not fair, but it is a definite reality. And whether we know it or not, or whether we hear about it or not, I knew for a fact going into this that business would be lost. I was just hoping it would not be severe enough for me to even really notice it, or for it to hurt my family, or that the reality that, we have been also kind of hoping for in terms of finding, our tribe of people that will support us despite what our political affiliation or stance is.
You and I know, being in this business, sowing these seeds takes time. And I think one thing that we need to hold on to is we have received 2 beautiful comments in the past week that I just so appreciate. People, one was a message through TikTok.
Do you have that where you could read it?
I do. And one was on TikTok, and one was a comment on Spotify. And so the TikTok comment was, "Hi, just wanted to reach out and tell you guys that I've really been enjoying listening to this. I just found you on TikTok, but saw your post a while back in the Alabama Blue Dots Facebook page. It can sometimes feel so isolating living here and not having many people to talk to, so I hope y'all keep it up."
Wow, love it. I would like to encourage people to send us DMs, let us know what you want us to talk about. It's exciting to know that we have at least now 2 confirmed listeners. Well, Josh said he was a listener. Maybe Jason Patton will start listening. I mean, before this week is over, we could have 10.
We have 20 subscribers on YouTube.
We do? All right, what was the other Spotify review?
Okay, Hope Revived, ... The thoughts and conversations are like water being poured to parched land. Aww. Important learnings, exposure, empathy, understanding another's perspective. The key is to try. And I feel like that right there is our whole mission statement.
Right.
So I just, gosh, y'all, I so appreciate some of these really, really kind things. It has given me not necessarily the strength, but the hope to carry on.
I tell you, it's going to be really gratifying and rewarding if and when, big emphasis on if, we get, I don't think it's probably too hopeful to think we might get some MAGA people into the fold, but I do think at some point, some people from the right are going to start. It would not surprise me to get a review like that from somebody on the right a year from now, maybe 2 years from now, maybe the way this presidency is going. I mean, we're in we just eclipsed 2 weeks, and it's already just the biggest dumpster shit fire hole situation I've ever seen. Lots of really scary stuff. I mean, when we're trying to get rid of people at the CIA, I'm like, is that a good idea? Is the CIA overstaffed? I mean, going after these people in the FBI that were
part of the January 6th
ordered. I mean, I'm sure that if you raised your hand at the FBI and go, "Oh, I want to go get this asshole Donald Trump," maybe there's some validity to that. But if you're following the directive of a superior, I just, I'm at a complete loss, and I really, I think we're going to need somebody in the who is an independent or a Republican to stand up, because hasn't history, we've talked a lot about history and not learning from it and it repeating itself, but hasn't there been heroes throughout history who have come in to defend and save and fight for this democracy experiment?
I would think yes.
Because I mean, you see people, the only people I see, all right, so let's use Marco Rubio as an example. He sailed through his confirmation hearing. People are like, he's a Trump cabinet appointee that we can really get behind, no matter what side of the aisle you're on.
Mm-hmm.
And he's made excuses or sidestep questions about the January 6th pardon. Mm-hmm. He has been on the record talking about how important foreign aid is. Mm-hmm. And he is not coming out against, USAID being shut down or potentially shut down. He called Trump's new Gaza policy generous. And, it's just apparent to a lot of people, this guy wakes up looking in the mirror going, go have a great day, Mr. President. I mean, he wants to be president. You've said, I think, more than once on this show that you feel like Katie Britt is extremely optimistic or ambitious. Mm-hmm. So therefore, maybe she just greets everything out of Trump's mouth with optimism and just doesn't question it. That scares me, that there's nobody. We've only got like Mitch McConnell voted against Hegseth. Mitch McConnell's coming out talking about how, idiotic the tariffs are. But we need somebody who is not on their way out on the right to step up. So did you answer the question? And then we kind of need to take a break about what is your big issue right
today?
Now?
I have two, and I will get into after the break.
All right, welcome back, everybody.
Welcome back. Okay, so you walked in today and asked if I was wearing my Democrat blue.
Yeah.
Which I kind of am.
Leather pants on. I mean, I just feel so. And when you look at me in the TikTok video, I'm like all slumped over. My posture's terrible. I'm like, ugh.
Put that little back pillow behind you.
And then you're always like Christmas and these.
Someone
Christmas
commented
colors
on my shiny hair, so I really appreciate it.
Yeah, like your hair's all done. You got these outfits on. So I'm gonna have to join one of those sites where they pick clothes out for you, I think, and just work on my fashion here. But I feel like I'm like the Andy Richter and you're like Conan O'Brien anyway. So I probably don't need to change a thing.
So you asked if I was wearing my Democrat blue. Yes, but it was really wearing my realtor blue. Mm-hmm. There is a weaponization of words right now, whether it's like by people in comments or even by Congress people. Nancy Mace, Republican from South Carolina, one of her big strongholds is attacking trans women. And really her like sound bit is penises in women's bathrooms. So she's just foul.
But this is somebody who was a big supporter of trans people in the past. If you dig, and you'll find that she has been very supportive of trans people. So I did not hear what this trans slur was, but go back and do some research on that. Okay, I think that
I will say the trans slur is TRANNY, which until I heard that on C-SPAN, I couldn't tell you the last time I heard that word or the term transvestite. Outside of like someone saying it funny on RuPaul's Drag Race. I feel like I had a visceral reaction. It's clearly somebody using, an old word to like instill like hate and fear and harm somebody.
I just sit here thinking, I mean,
and like, didn't just say it once, was like T-word, like doubling down.
I think if you knew if you heard some of her supportive statements towards, I wouldn't say maybe it's not specifically trans, but she's been outspoken in the past about LGBTQ. But do some research on that.
Okay.
I think if you came into this podcast knowing some of that, you'd be even more pissed off.
Well,
because you're like, what's happened?
Yeah.
And it's just, the transgender thing is one of those politics of distractions that I feel like.
100%.
So they're like, this is an easy target.
Yes.
The right wing, the Christian right nationalists, which we need to be really concerned about that right now. That's one of my big talking points for today. It's just like, hey, we're getting men out of women's sports.
Yep.
We are getting these illegals out of our country. We're renaming the Gulf of Mexico. All these great things are happening. All this money's being cut. We're getting rid of all the just abundance of waste in government. While, the rich are getting tax breaks.
Yep.
CEOs, everybody who, there's just while the income gap grows, the disparity grows, the war on the middle class, the war on the poor, the war on minorities just intensifies.
Yep.
And a lot of these people, working class people and minorities, were big Trump supporters this year, past year.
Yeah. So the use of that slur, comment saying like, if you use that word in any job setting, you would be fired. And I want to take that to like us and what our responsibilities are within our profession, and also use a comment that I saw on AL.com. I wouldn't have clocked this unless the commenter didn't have the term realty in his handle. And it was an AL.com post about the ICE raids in Fultondale and Huntsville. And this guy's comment said, "Get the heck out of our country. Trump is back, baby." And I would like to take both of these things, a use of this slur, as well as saying, "Get the heck out of our country," by a realtor professional. We are bound by many laws in our profession, and one is bound by federal laws, and one of those being the Fair Housing Act, which prohibits discrimination by providers of housing. So that can be, real estate companies, as well as entities, municipalities, banks, or other lending institutions, homeowners, insurance companies. And it is based on the following: race or color, religion, sex, national origin, familial status, or disability. So my comment to this guy was,
oh God,
because I was feeling spicy, I said, "National origin is a protected class. Discriminating against any protected classes is a fair housing violation. Bold choice voicing that opinion from your professional account."
Was their response?
He deleted his comment. I would not have gotten into this fight if his handle was not directly related to real estate. And then when you go to his page, it was so and so, this real estate company, and the whole page was promoting real estate content. And this does not say you cannot discriminate, based on someone who is born or not born here. This is, you cannot discriminate upon national origin. That's anybody. We also, as realtors, we have to abide by federal law, but then also the law of our trade association, which is the National Association of Realtors. We're bound by our code of ethics, which says realtors shall not deny equal professional services to any person, and we have additional protected classes than federal protections. So our protected classes under the Code of Ethics are race, color, religion, sex, disability, familial status, national origin, sexual orientation, or gender identity. And then we go a step further, and we have our code and then the articles. That's Article 10. And then standards of practice. This was adopted November of 2020, and garnered a lot of feedback. It says realtors must not use harassing speech, hate speech, epithets, or slurs based on race, color, religion, sex, disability, familial status, national origin, sexual orientation, or gender identity. So if Nancy Mace was a realtor, she would be in violation of standard of practice 10-5. And we just need to do better.
I don't know if you saw this, but one of the headlines that grabbed me since our last episode was that Trump appointed speechwriter fired for attending conference with white nationalists to top State Department role. So here we go back with Marco Rubio is now working with this white nationalist who said horrible things, and I want to read them to you, but let's do that later because I think,
Okay.
I want to just keep vetting out your thoughts on this transgender situation.
I honestly, that was not what I prepared today.
Okay. Well, I was also just thinking
but I agree. It's a distraction. Transgender people make up less than 1% of the United States population. Not to instill like fear and fear-monger, but also like to not shy away from hard truths and conversations.
And the history they're trying to whitewash.
Yes, Jews in Germany made up less than 1% of their population.
It's scary. But again, and nobody's really noticing or paying attention, or nobody really cares yet. You think I don't know. It's like, is it just that easy for people to get over the cost of gas rising, the cost of eggs rising, war in Ukraine still going on? But it's like, wow, yeah, let's rename. This badass is going to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. Let's get the hats. Let's get a kegger and a bonfire and just celebrate and blow some shit up. So did you see that, like when you were talking about our code of ethics and things like that, but they're removing pages from websites.
Oh! When I was researching this morning, I printed it out, so it's time-stamped because I'm that person now with my new file cabinets.
You're so organized.
We're, the basement getting fancy down here. The Fair Housing Act overview website on the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Page not found.
Wow.
Immediate thoughts.
Well, and it's happening across the board on so many. And I'm just like thinking about, is the Trump White House going to pressure NAR? Like use some of these lawsuits we're involved in? Like, hey, we'll get you out of some of these, but you need to like change your code of ethics or change some of the, because we don't need y'all concerned about people that have changed their gender. Is that coming? Man, a lot of people are bending to the will.
But I think NAR and our lobbyists need to lobby for this Fair Housing Act, this page to be reinstated.
I'm a big RPAC supporter, but I'm really have been questioning, like, where is this money going? Like, why would I even pay into? I mean, it just seems like NAR is a shit show legally, and legally in troubled waters.
Oh, yeah.
And there's so many issues going on, but I agree with you 100%.
But this information of the Fair Housing Act not being available on HUD's website is very concerning to me. And like what we do in our industry and the protections of all people, and that all people deserve to be treated equally and deserve to purchase and have a home.
This shit's crazy that's happening. I mean, we have somebody working in a top State Department role who has said some terrible things about minorities. Do you want me to read you one of these quotes?
Please. Oh.
So this guy's name is Beatty, B-E-A-T-T-I-E.
Okay.
Beatty.
Biotti.
Biotti.
Body yaddy yaddy.
Has he made a series of racially charged comments, writing in one tweet last year, "Competent white men must be in charge if you want things to work.
I saw that.
Unfortunately, our entire national ideology is predicated on the coddling the feelings of women and minorities and demoralizing competent white men."
I would say that our everything is about coddling white men, and y'all should just do better. Just be better.
He later suggested black people were less intelligent than white people. That's crazy. He said that when Trump referred to whatever countries as shithole countries during his last presidency, that it was a high point of his presidency. And then this is, look at this. This is what I wanted to take, because this is going to get you stirred up. In 2020, a deeply misogynistic tweet from Beatty attacking Taylor Swift for opposing a monument in Tennessee's capital honoring Nathan Bedford Forrest, a Confederate general and early leader of the Ku Klux Klan, comparing her advocacy to performing sexual favors for music producers. As the attack
goes to show the misogyny. If a woman has gotten anywhere, she must have sucked to get there. Like, that is so horrific of somebody to make that insinuation, and that's what he just did. Just an example of like the hatred towards women, and that women are considered second class to these men.
What about this? Selena Gomez crying on social media about people that her people, she referred to them as her people. All my people are getting attacked. The children, I don't understand. I'm so sorry. I wish I could do something, but I can't. I don't know what to do. I'll try everything. I promise, she said. And then there was...
I believe she's Mexican American?
Yeah, there was Republican, I don't know if he's still in office or not, that says she should be deported over her ICE raid video. So she laughed it off in a story by the Guardian, but really, really troublesome stuff that nobody's really paying attention to. And I really listened hard when Josh was talking about that last week, because I believe he's absolutely right, is that, these people don't know how they're going to get from one day to the next. They're worried about tomorrow. They're worried about like the space and time immediately in front of them, and they don't have time to watch the nightly news with Lester Holt or whoever their favorite nightly news person is, because they can't control it, right? And they don't have time for it.
Okay, you are coming from a lovely, kind place of empathy and understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And I recognize that I'm not. This doesn't always go to a time argument, but a priority. I think people don't prioritize listening and learning and thinking outside themselves and having to seek hard truths. And when they hear something, work within those feelings, and it's easier to shut it all off and shut it down. I have severely been limiting my time on social media, and I feel like I have gotten time back in my life. So, and I recognize we don't have kids, so I have a different use of time from others, but many people say I can't do that. And a lot of times my argument is, you can, you're not making it a priority. And that's okay, but saying you just can't is trying to trying to obtain a get out of jail free card. So that's just my little bit of accountability.
I think there's something else brewing here, because we have already discussed on a prior episode about how working class people and minorities, that this, let's say the underprivileged, really are responsible for putting Trump in office and are giving him a very short leash for things to change. We know that people are angry. We know people have a right to be angry because they don't feel like they're being seen, they're being heard, their needs are being met, and they were sold a bill of goods that they are going to inherit with this new administration, this golden era of the United States. And what happens when they do finally realize, through pain at the pump, pain at the grocery store, pain for prescription drug prices, that they were sold a bill of goods.
Pain in April when they file their taxes and they don't
that
get
their
as much
taxes
back.
went up, that they were used. They
Or a pawn in somebody else's game.
Yeah. So they knew, so MAGA knew this existed. And they're like, we're going to exploit that to get reelected. We're going to use people's fear and their anger to further our agenda against them. So what's going to happen? I mean, is January 6th going to look like a peaceful protest in comparison to what's going to happen when they realize what's actually going on?
I mean, you might be optimistic that they do put those pieces together. Or are people going to make excuses and just believe whatever they're calling him daddy, whatever Trump tells? I don't know.
Or is it going to be too little too late because democracy disappears in the darkness? And this is what the Gulf of America casts a shadow so that these, misdeeds can happen in the darkness. It's terrifying. So one of these big issues that I've been wrestling with is the transgender issue. Now, I want to say, before I say what I'm going to say, which may be controversial, I don't support what's happening against the medical care and the government getting in between a parent, a child, and their doctor. Okay. So limiting these hormonal therapies and drugs and things like that, or outlawing them. I'm not for that at all. I don't think, this is, a lot of this has come out, I think, been brought to the surface about, these abortion bans, that it's, it's not good for the mom. It's not good. There's some serious concerns. There's economic issues. There's all kind of things that come in to play here. And I do believe it's an infringement on freedom. But I'm going to say that the ban on transgender people in sports, that I'm going to support it. So I think the issue, I don't see a way that we can move forward on this issue. For one, it's being used as a weapon of mass distraction. Okay, we've established that. Really smart people that I've tried to listen to discuss and debate this don't know. They're like, I just don't have the basis of, the scientific education to really make, some really informed comments on what I think this should be. They have no idea what the resolution is. And I just think that while this is cruel, there's no way around. There's no other resolution that is going to allow us to move on as a country from it.
That's a lot. I'm trying to take it in.
Take your time. Maybe it's a situation where we're picking our battles. This is not one that we're going to win. It'd be one thing if I'd heard something from the left that makes sense, or if there was some negotiation on how we could make this work. But it's like, okay, well, if you really want to play sports, this might get you going. If you really want to play sports, then you need to wait to transition till after your sporting career is done, which you've already said is bad for the body and not ideal.
Well, and that is my assumption as somebody who is not a medical professional. One argument would be, is this the start of death to 1,000 cuts? If we give on this, where does it end? Another argument is, both the NCAA and the IOC, which is the International Olympic Committee. So the NCAA, they call it a transgender student athlete participation policy. And there are testosterone thresholds based on what sport it is. And so there's different thresholds for different sports. This can be found on ncaa.org. It is broken down into fall, winter, and spring sports, and also submission deadlines for championship eligibility. It includes their policy benchmark, and it's really like how much, I would assume, testosterone that is within that individual. Another thing on NCAA is trans student athletes who are not taking hormone treatment related to gender transition may participate in sex-separated sports activities in accordance with their sex assigned at birth. So within the NCAA, if you are someone who is not currently taking like hormone treatment, like you can't participate in that sexes. It's those hormones that make up these chemical changes within this individual. A trans male student athlete who is not taking testosterone related to gender transition may participate on a men or women's team. A trans female student athlete who is not taking hormone treatments related to gender transition may not compete on a women's team. So they're saying even if you are someone who identifies as female, but you are not taking those hormone treatments, you can't participate with other women. So this argument of men can't participate in women's sports, they're not under the NCAA. You have to be taking these hormone treatments and fall within these approved testosterone thresholds to participate in women's sports.
All right. So
these things are already in place.
Well, so yes. And this is just, again, this is like him being the champion of women's sports, the savior of women's sports, just being, this is an accolade that he can seize upon.
I don't see how this is not a violation to Title IX. So I will be looking at the ACLU to fight it.
Well, but we have Martina Navratilova.
Yes, Martina Navratilova, one of the greatest tennis players of all time. Also, fam, currently married to a Real Housewife of Miami. So she is in the Bravo universe.
Okay. Well, a lifelong Democrat who has championed fairness in women's sports, ridiculed the Democrats, the Democratic side of the aisle, for failing to do what President Trump did. This is a quote from Martina, I hate that the Democrats totally failed women and girls on this very clear issue of women's sports being for females only. So there is a person who is in the queer community, who is female, a famous female sports athlete, coming out in support of President Donald Trump as the savior of women's sports, the champion, the protector of women in sports. And so I'm just using that as an example of why I feel like this issue.
I would kindly disagree and also say Caitlyn Jenner, as a trans woman, is a threat to all trans people. So just because they're a member of that community doesn't mean they're actually a champion of that community. So I just say, Martina, you are wonderful. I respectfully disagree.
She says more Dems need to step up here. I know many who agree but are scared to speak up because of re-election. I say do the right thing, grow a spine. Well, we could say that same thing about growing a spine on the Republican side when these January 6 rioters, somebody that tased a police officer in the neck was paroled. But that's why there's just so many issues. It's coming at us so fast. To me, we've got to have an order of priority. And this is just taking on a persona that I don't think can be silenced or defeated. And now when you have people in the LGBT, like celebrity female athletes in the queer community coming out and supporting Donald Trump, again, you're right. That's one of many, and she may be misguided, and you can disagree with her all you want. But this is my stance on it, that I'm moving on from it, and I won't criticize this stance. I will criticize them getting in the way of parents and their doctors, whether that's on abortion, women and their doctors, men and their doctors, whether that's on abortion or transitioning to a different sex. But I'm out on this one.
Okay.
All right.
I'm not. And I don't think anybody's going to change my mind. Because I believe they need a voice. I believe there are protections in place for the women. I think an outright ban is a violation of Title IX and discriminates based on sex. Trump's newest executive order is for all schools receiving federal funding, which I think falls under Title IX. If you have to submit testing to make sure you fall within the approved testosterone levels, that would show that there is like chemical changes within you to match that of another female, a female assigned at birth. So then at a certain point, they are, and I'm probably saying this all wrong, but they are more like a female than they are male.
But my point is, you're never going to convince the opposing side of that. You're there. It's never going to happen.
But it's not about convincing. It's about protecting and not allowing this discrimination.
So
there's people out there that think you should still use the N-word. Doesn't mean that it's not wrong. Doesn't mean that we don't have protections in place to keep other realtors from not using it. So it's not, I don't care if we don't convince a single red person that it's not allowed. As long as transgender people have protections under the law, that's the only thing I care about.
Well,
because around here, people are hateful and they're racist and they're bigots, minorities, and these protected classes are protected classes for a reason. And we should not stop fighting. We are not free until we all are free. You allow discrimination of one group, they will come after the rest of us.
Okay, then. I do think, I would love, in terms of just guests on the show, like I'd love to have a mother and a parent of a, transitioning child on here. I think me more than anybody, we've been kind of joking around about going to Pride. I really feel like, I need to be exposed to more of that. But, it's sad, but I just think this is not something that I feel like should be reversed in 2028. I just don't feel like it. I mean, like we can't be doing this. I don't know, the tit for tat. And there's an article I saw about, every administration, when it changes hands from political party, like when Republicans win, they undo everything the Democrats did. When the Democrats win, they undo everything that, the Republicans did. And, I'm just really concerned about things like civil rights. I'm concerned about white nationalism, Christian nationalism, people on the fringe. I'm really concerned about the environment. I'm concerned about peace all over the globe. And I just, the people that want to keep up the fight for men competing in women's sports, I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm just saying, like, we got bigger fish to fry. And I think it's too complex.
I think you continuing to use the term men and women's sports plays into this red-leaning ideology. And until you change your language around it, you will continue to stay on that other side, and your language currently is not inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
Because these are not men and women sports. These are trans women wanting to play in women's sports. You saying men and women's sports is just as bad as Nancy May saying penises in women's bathrooms.
So,
And it starts with using inclusive language.
well, what if I said women born as men competing in women's sports?
That's still not inclusive language.
So
And I will say, none of these laws, they're all attacking trans women. None of them are against trans men competing in men's sports. So are you really to protecting women? They're not. They're not. It's a smoke screen.
I think it should be across the board, no matter where you're transitioning to. You know, like, you know, I don't know. This is going to sound horrible, but there's, you know, I don't know. There's a Special Olympics. Maybe there's a Trans Olympics. I don't know, but it is really.
So then, should there be a Black Olympics?
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good point. And I would say that's something I'm more concerned about that we're heading towards. So I don't know.
Okay, so
What
this
is
is
that?
by Marsha P. Johnson, who is a trans woman who is one of the mothers of Pride, and her quote is,
"That's how come I've been walking for gay rights all these years instead of riding in cars and celebrating everything, because you never completely have your rights, one person, until you all have your rights."
if we eliminate freedoms for the trans community, I mean, none of us are free. Michael Phelps has fast twitching muscles because he was born with a physiological advantage that made that just works for swimming better. Should he have been disbarred from swimming? Brianna Stewart is 6'4". She has a 7'1" wingspan. Should she not be allowed to play women's basketball? There are physiological advantages that cis men and women have in their sports, coupled with years of training and dedication and devoting their life to their craft. There are examples of all of these things where people have these slight advantages because of what they were born with.
All right, let me ask you this. The female boxer who may be in a suicidal mental state right now, we don't know, because she was labeled transgender when she was born a woman. And then after they debunked that, they said, oh, well, she's got, you know, her genetics, she's got more male genes than female genes. Do you think she would be
The
relieved?
chromosomes.
The chromosomes. Do you think she would be relieved by this, going, all right, well, now there's no question. Now this is not going to happen to a female athlete moving forward because of this ban. And
Well, no. Then you would have to have a ban within the IOC, and the IOC already has thresholds in place to ensure that
didn't protect her before. So now was
What do you mean
dubbed
it
a
didn't?
man competing in a woman's sport when she was born a woman.
That is hate and vitriol, misgendering somebody because she's a woman of color and because she is not what one side views as the epitome of like what a woman should look like. That is never going to stop, and the attack on trans women will continue. This vitriol is going to continue and misgendering other women.
I don't know.
That's still a problem.
I think this is a really powerful argument. It's a powerful discussion, and it's something that I think we should get some clips of this out on social as soon as possible to see, you know, to get some feedback on this, to see what people are saying, because I think just what we brought to the surface is how complex this is. I mean, there's people still believe I mean, this past Olympics was a complete shit show because of the opening ceremony, because of this particular misgendering situation. It was just very much politicized.
Okay, I would like to read this from the AP News.
Uh-oh.
Let's be very clear. We are talking about women's boxing. Box said on Saturday. We have two boxers who are born as a woman, who have been raised as a woman, who have passports as a woman, and who have competed for many years as women. And this is the clear definition of a woman. There was never any doubt about them being a woman. A lot of this goes back to, well, they were kicked out of the IBA previously for failing eligibility test. The IBA, which is led by an acquaintance of Russian President Vladimir Putin. So I'm not going to take anything they say seriously. So what's to say the IBA didn't discriminate against these women? They have met the requirements for the International Olympic Committee, and a lot of the NCAA thresholds mirror that of the International Olympic Committee.
But you're in a reality, an era of people trusting conspiracy theories over factual scientific data and research. They're never going to put their faith in that over somebody screaming that, a man is getting in the ring to box a woman. I just don't think it's ever going to happen. It's sad. It is terrible. We know this community is suffering, and we know there's going to be some serious consequences. I'm talking like people are going to take their lives. A lot of stuff's going to get messed up. But
okay, so just because white people were not in favor of segregation, should we have kept the schools in Alabama desegregated?
No.
There's not a difference.
I'm looking at the details because
hold on. I'm talking about there's a difference. Just because you say people don't accept it does not mean we should not fight for the rights of this group of people that is being discriminated against. Because otherwise, then the loudest, the majority always wins. And this is the start of an erasure of a community.
So if I'm really trying to argue for the other side, I would say that it's too cut and dry, white and black. Because you're saying that, that there needs to be medical procedures to make somebody less man and more female, and to where
hormone replacement therapy.
When the testosterone levels get the same, then that person is theoretically a woman. Right?
I think we're talking, yes.
So you're saying medically, you can medically make a man, you can take away his manhood and put him on the same playing field as a female athlete based on muscle definition, based on testosterone. You can scientifically level the playing field, is what you're saying.
That is what hormone replacement therapy does.
Okay. So what I'm saying is that may very well be true. And I'm a person who's like, you can't really argue against science. But I'm saying it's so complicated. It's not like giving somebody a drug test who is doping in the Tour de France. I just don't think there's...
Yes. These approved testosterone thresholds. Yes, you can. And trans athletes have to submit eligibility to the NCAA to participate in their sports to ensure that they are within these same testosterone thresholds. I don't know how that's any different than doping or testing for doping.
What I'm saying is that I don't see how it's ever going to be a a litmus test that the other side is going to make peace with.
And
I
don't care if the right never makes peace with it. There are people who believe the South should rise again. Doesn't mean it's right.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean we cannot stop fighting for this community that is under attack. And we shouldn't just say, well, they're the easy ones to get rid of, so let's just let them. Now you've created something called precedent. And you've opened the door for the rest of the communities.
Yeah, it's a big, heavy topic. And let me just say this. I don't know if my viewpoint is the right one. But I'm just saying,
I appreciate that.
We have got I do feel like racism is taking a foothold. I do feel like anti-Semitism is gaining ground again. And I just don't see, the Olympic Committee coming out and saying, hey, these transgender athletes that are competing in the summer games or the winter games have all been tested, and they are from a hormone, testosterone, whatever the levels are, that that the playing field is equal. I don't think you can ever get to a place where that's going to be accepted or enough to where people are going to not boycott the Olympics, where countries will stop participating, where it'll just be a complete shit show.
If countries want to choose to boycott, that is their prerogative. The United States has boycotted at least one.
All right, let me try this. Let me try it from this perspective, okay? So I'm a parent of a woman competing in an Olympic boxing match, and my daughter's next opponent is a transgender female. The Olympic Committee, all the powers that be, have presented me with the data that biologically these two competitors are on equal ground. There's still the reality that that person on the other side of the ring was born a man. And that will can never be undone, or that reality can never be taken away. It's always going to be present. And I think that's the strongest argument that the right makes, is that your biology, how you were born, is who you are through and through. No operation, no therapy can change that. And I don't know. I don't know how I would feel if indeed that reality was true.
Yeah, I don't know enough about hormone replacement therapy. One thing I have heard on the Anti-Trans Hate Machine podcast is these trans women, after receiving hormone replacement therapy, have said we are closer to females now than we are males. That's the point of it.
I mean, we don't trust the science around. I mean, everybody thinks like car emissions, that none of this. There's half of the population of this country that feels like, that the climate is just fickle. It goes through these cycles, and it has nothing to do with climate change. This global warming thing is a myth. And I think for anybody to think that one day everybody, or the majority of people, are going to see a competition between a woman born as a woman and a man born as a man being fair. And so I don't think that they should be hated on. I think it's sad. There's a lot of sad realities associated with the human condition that we are just not going to be able to figure out. And maybe it's just as simple as what's good for what's in the best interest of the majority. I don't know.
It's a slippery slope.
I know it is, but it's like, I feel for you. I don't believe you should be hated on. I don't believe you should be marginalized or segregated, but
that goes against things you've just said. You do believe they should be marginalized and segregated because you just said they should have their own Olympics. That's segregation.
Therein lies the argument about how complex this is.
I mean, I go back to, I don't think it's about getting through it. I don't think it's about convincing the other side. It's about fighting these discrimination bills in court, which is why we have organizations like the ACLU. Mm-hmm. Because I've heard this, and I don't remember where, but like when Congress men and women get together, Congress people get together to write laws, they don't look to make sure that their law, like counteracting something else or ensuring that it is lawful. They're just like, we're going to do some shit and put it out there and see what happens. And then that's for the court system to decide. And it's unfortunate that we need places like the Southern Poverty Law Center and the ACLU to go on these offensive against these discrimination bills, and then it is so long for the court system to take place. But if we waited for the majority on everything, we would not have had the progress we've had in the last 100 years.
Well, I would say, I would try to test this out real quick, is that I've heard some people saying that the America that we have known and loved is no longer exists. There's been some radical change that has happened, over the last 10 plus years that has forced us in a position, I think, to pick and choose. I don't see this being a battle that gets won to where there's a win-win for both sides. I just don't see it.
How could there ever be a win-win on both sides if one side is about discrimination? I don't care if they fucking win or not. They're discriminating against a group of people.
So how are you ever going, though, to convince a mother that her child's not in danger?
I will never be able to convince my mother that I'm allowed to get fucking married. I don't fucking care. I'm going to fight for my right. Mm-hmm. I don't fucking care. I'm going to fight for my right, and I'm going to fight for the rights of the rest of the people in my queer community.
Okay, then. Which is powerful and awesome. And you may die fighting a battle that cannot be won, which I think is noble and heroic. But I know I'm moving on, because I feel like we got if we don't have clean air to fucking breathe, it doesn't matter. If we don't, if this democracy experiment fails, none of it matters, because nobody's going to have any fucking rights.
Correct.
So that's where I'm at.
Correct.
But all I'm saying, just to clarify my point, is that it's way more black and white when you talk about, like racial segregation or sexual orientation segregation, as opposed to this issue. Because this issue, you've actually got to get under a damn microscope to figure it out. And who knows, one day in the future, and because so many people like you have continued to fight, that technology becomes such that it just really becomes indisputable that these two opponents are on a level playing field, or as level as it can be. Because I do believe there's truth in what you're saying about Brittany Griner and Michael Phelps being like, kind of freaks of genetics and, being phenoms in their own sport because of it.
I think an equal playing field in sport is
a misnomer, or
is a complete myth.
Yeah.
Because rich kids already have a leg up in sport than people that don't, because they have access to, camps and private instructors and all these other things to help them work their craft. Like, there's a lot of things in sport that already don't have an equal playing field when you look at it closely.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that.
Like access 100%. And I mean, gosh, just financial status and access and a whole bunch of stuff. So like saying we're going to completely even the playing field is not. We can't ever do that.
All right. Well, let me just say this real quick, because this is an interesting point that Scott Galloway brought up on the Raging Moderates podcast about, the wealth inequality. He said that if you are wealthy and you need to get an abortion, there will be options. If you are a person who wants to transition to another gender and you have enough money, there will still be options. So all these things that they're attacking and going against and outlawing and whatever, trying to erase, if you have the means, there will still be solutions for you. The people that are going to be most affected by this are the people in the lower socioeconomic state.
Okay, so yesterday on the gram, I've been following Courier News, which is super fun. And I saw a very heated C-SPAN argument. And so then I thought, well, let me go look it up. And this time I took notes. This was the House Oversight and Reform Committee. And it was the hearing on government efficiency, part 1, because it went so long. I didn't listen to the whole intro, but Mr. Connolly, a Democrat from Virginia, moved to subpoena Elon Musk, saying he has run rampant with Department of Government Efficiency, and we need to get him in here and subpoena him. That happened between about 13 and a half and 14-minute mark, that motion. The chairman is Mr. Comer, a Republican from Kentucky. He eliminates debate, does not recognize points of order, questioning why those in the chamber cannot debate. Then he recognizes someone on his side of the aisle, Dr. Fox. Dr. Fox moves to table the motion, seconded by a Mr. Higgins. I assume both of those are Republicans. I hadn't looked it up. Then Chairman Comer calls for the verbal vote, and then after the verbal vote says, in the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Which is that just feels icky. Then somebody asks for a recorded vote. Do not know who that individual is. The camera did not pan to his face, and the chair does not recognize that individual by name. So we can assume it was a Democrat who called for the recorded vote. Then, of course, everybody's so annoyed. Then they call each person in the chamber. They start on the right. Then they go to the left. Then they go to the chairman. Then after the chairman's vote was recorded, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people, one by one, say, Mr. Chairman, yes, Mrs. Roden, was my vote recorded? Then I don't know if it's the secretary or what her role is. No, Mrs. Roden, your vote wasn't recorded. I vote aye. Mrs. Roden's vote is recorded as aye. So you can see these 8 individuals trickling in while the vote is happening to ensure that Republicans then have the majority. The ayes have it. The ayes had it 20-19.
So they're probably texting each other like, hey, get here quick.
Yes, and you can see the chairman giving people a thumbs up on vote yes, vote yes. So these people were not in here from the beginning. They did not participate in the original vote. They skirted in and then were able to vote. And then, so the motion to subpoena Elon Musk was tabled, they were voting on the tabling of the original motion, so now nothing can happen in that front. And this is just, I think this is bullshit. Like, your ass needs to be in a seat when they call for the vote. Then, like, you can't. And it's like, what are y'all doing? Like, you don't think this is important, so you're not in there to participate. And I guess this is just how the right, because they control both chambers, are just going to continue to act like this. This is making me like learn and watch. And if there's a time Democrats begin to act with these kind of shenanigans, I hope at that time I will be just as
critical.
Yeah, I hope at that time I'll be just as critical on them, because I would argue this creates government inefficiency. So just a part of, see something that's like, kind of seems over the top, not clickbaity, that's not the right word. See something on Instagram that like garners a lot of attention right off the gate, going back, researching it, learning more, and then, finding out some things that are happening within our government that I disagree with.
Well, I would
Thoughts
just say
on all
this.
that?
Yeah, Comer's gross. He is just I think he's, it's and probably really unfair for me to say this because I don't know him personally, but what I've seen of him on TV, on these committees, chairing these committees. I mean, this is the guy that was going to go after Biden. He was going to impeach Biden. Instead, he had all this evidence, and it was going to be a slam dunk, and it was it was a joke. It was like laughed out of Congress. So I'm not surprised. But yeah, I agree. I mean, if you like, I agree that people should be doing more research and becoming more knowledgeable about what's going on both sides, and that we should be all trying to get in the middle.
Yeah.
And calling out anybody who's on the fringe. And just not, there's a zero tolerance policy for it.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'll get to my celebration of Katie Britt on another episode.
Okay.
I feel like I've been, pro MAGA enough this episode.
Okay.
I don't want to pile on.
I appreciate that.
But everybody look up, just do some
God.
research on Katie Britt's new social media bill that she's introducing. And we will see you guys on the next episode, where we're hopefully going to have a new guest.
Well, y'all, thank you again for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the episode. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, subscribe, follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and we will see you next week.
Bye.